Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk to you about my December wrap-up for 2024, so the final wrap-up of the year and everything that I read. And so I read 5 books and I had 1 DNF in the month of December, which is kind of ironic because the DNF was the very last book of the month. I DNF'd that book on like the 29th or something of December, but I was gonna DNF it regardless based on how I wasn't enjoying it, but I was glad that I didn't push through that and make that either my final book of 2024 or my first book of 2025, because I think that if I finished it, that would just not be the energy that we wanted. So among those 5 books, I read just over 3,100 pages, and my average rating was a 3.95. So I had 3 4.25 stars, 1 4-star, and 1 3-star read in the month of December. And then, of course, I have the DNF, but we'll discuss that first so that we can move on to the rated reviews. So the sad thing about this is that Ben and I did actually buy a really pretty copy of this book just because it was available when we were buying it, but that is Voyage of the Damned by Frances White. It obviously has a really pretty cover, and it also has these really nice sprayed edges, and so like physically this is beautiful. Obviously I wanted to like it, but unfortunately I gave this I think it was like 85 pages or something like that, and I didn't like the writing. The concept that we're working with in this book is that we have an empire that exists on a peninsula, and that peninsula is split up into 12 provinces. So one of those provinces is sort of like the seat of the emperor. So there are 11 other provinces that are not the seat of the emperor, but 12 total, and each one of these provinces has a like hierarchy structure, has a ruler, and so each of these provinces also has an heir. And there is a magical gift that exists in the ruling family of each of these provinces. And when the heir kind of comes of age, or at some point during their coming of age, they will manifest this magical gift and it will be taken away from their parent, whoever it is. But there's no guarantee of who the magic is going to go to among the kind of offspring, like the children of the rulers. And so you kind of have this special event that we are dealing with as the direct plot line here, and the 12 heirs are all sailing on a ceremonial voyage to celebrate, I believe it's the heir to the emperor taking her spot. Actually, apparently they are taking this voyage to mark 1,000 years of peace between the provinces. I don't honestly remember that being mentioned, but that's what it was for. So we follow the heir of the kind of bottom of the barrel province, like the fish province. They're kind of looked down upon by the other provinces with other industries that are a little bit more luxurious or fashionable, or kind of just viewed as more prestigious than fishing. And so our protagonist has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, but I immediately bounced right off the writing style in this book. It's very tongue-in-cheek, it's very quirky, it's written in first person, and the protagonist's perspective is very direct to reader, but while also being very quirky is just the best way to describe it. The character is described as a class clown and kind of wisecracking, and it was such a vibe mismatch because it felt like something to be taken seriously, but our main character is calling the other heirs super bitches and stuff, and I don't know, I hated it so much. That feels so mean to say, but I only made it as far as I did because I was interested to see what the inciting incident would be, how the murder would happen that kicks off the mystery in this book. And once that happened, and the tone was still extremely like silly and zany and unserious, I was like, okay, this is not going to be for me, because the style of telling this story, like I would be interested in a murder mystery, but being told the way that it's told, I'm not interested in it. So I just stopped there. So I really don't know anything more than that, although one of my friends, Ben, other Ben from Discord, did tell me a spoiler, that, because he was certain at that point that I was not continuing with the book, that horrified me because I would have hated that twist. So I'm happy that I didn't continue, but I am really disappointed that I didn't like this. And at this point, I don't even know what we're gonna do with this book, because it's so pretty. I mean, I guess I could donate it, but maybe Ben wants to read it. I highly doubt he does. But yeah, I don't know. We'll decide at some other point. But this unfortunately just really, really did not work for me. So that's that. Okay, next up we have the book that I gave 3 stars to in December, and that is Verity by Colleen Hoover. Honestly, 3 stars in this case. I just thought this book was fine. Like, I did enjoy it, but I also just have found that I don't like Colleen Hoover's writing style. I think that she did a good job in terms of the storyline and the tension building, and I didn't love like one of the twists, but this follows our main character, who is an author and is contacted to potentially finish a series of an author named Verity, who can no longer finish her own books because of an accident that she was in. And so our main character, Lowen, like travels to Verity's house because her husband is kind of the one like handling this deal of who is going to take over the series, and she is given access to Verity's notes and everything because she would need that in order to write the rest of the books. But she finds this autobiography that's written by Verity that details some extremely messed up things that she starts to wonder if it's true, and she starts to wonder if maybe Verity is faking this devastating injury that she has. She starts to get suspicious, and things in the house start to feel very tense and creepy. And so in that sense, like in terms of setting the mood and setting a tone, I do think that Colleen Hoover did a very good job. But on a technical sense, I just didn't really like her writing. And then I was kind of left with this impression that the entire book was fine. Like, I really didn't dislike it in any major way. And I read it really quickly because it was really easy to read. I wanted to keep reading it. And then afterwards I was like, okay, like all done, you know? So it's just one that I don't feel strongly about. But I can see why people like this, but if I'm not mistaken, this is the only like real thriller that she has written, even though it still did have an aspect of romance in it. So I don't think I'm necessarily interested in reading her romances. Obviously never say never, but in general, I'm probably not gonna be gravitating towards Colleen Hoover. Okay, I am going to talk about 2 books next that are both 4.25 stars because I'm skipping over the 4-star for right now because there are 2 books that I want to talk about together. And you will understand why. It's pretty obvious once you see them. But the remaining 2 books for the month were both 2.5 stars. And the first one of those was Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. And this is one of Ben's favorites. And it's a really short book. I think the only reason that I left it this long to read it is because I was just really afraid that I wouldn't like it. I didn't want to not like it because it's one of Ben's favorites. And I am somebody who tends to put things off when I am afraid of how I will feel. But this was really good, like really solid. So if you follow Ben as well, you've probably heard him talk about this on multiple occasions because it is one of his favorites and he used this book in his dissertation at university. But Convenience Store Woman follows our main character, whose name I can't even remember now, Kiko. We follow Kiko, and she is 36 years old, and she works in a convenience store and has always, since she was like 18 or in university, worked in a convenience store, and this is what she likes. She knows exactly what her world is, how it works, how she can best act and prepare for her job so that she can do her best, and this is an environment that she understands and she is comfortable. But nobody else really understands that. her parents, her sister, her friends, everybody, you know, wonders why she doesn't want to get married, why she is stuck in a dead-end job, but she doesn't feel that she's stuck. She feels like she's exactly where she's supposed to be. But she's always been a little bit different from other people. She hasn't really understood ways that you're supposed to react or ways that you're supposed to feel. And the book illustrates that early on through some things from her childhood. And Kiko even says, like, my parents loved me. I grew up in a loving home and I'm happy, but nobody else can understand that really. So it kind of just is a chronicle of a portion of her life. And some things change on her and some things stay the same, but it's a really interesting and blunt character to follow and blunt writing style. And I think that it's so clear what the book is doing, but it's not a negative that it's so clear. It's just the style of how it's being presented to you, and it's really well done. And I really liked this, and I have a feeling that I would like it even more on reread. Now, a very different book from Convenience Store Woman that also got 4.25 stars from me is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And so this, we have a couple copies of this book. We have this one, which is a little bit battered, as you can see. Ben had to tape on this corner because Maisie bit it off while he was reading it. It was already only hanging on by a thread, and she just helped it detach. But last year I also bought a nice illustrated edition of The Hobbit, so that was the one that I actually read, because the thing to worry about now is that if Ben and I are both reading a book at the same time, we have to worry about how we're physically going to do that, unless we like physically share the same copy, which is a little bit difficult. We haven't had to do that yet. But The Hobbit is obviously just a classic. It has never been my absolute favorite, but it does feel like a comfort read. I just love reading Bilbo's journey, all of the dwarves and Gandalf, and like there's a real whimsy that Tolkien put into The Hobbit that I don't know if it's fully there in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but we are going to be reading that in 2025 quarterly, so I will be seeing and re-experiencing that, but there's a real whimsical, fun tone to The Hobbit that just, it makes it such a fun time to read, and it just feels like fantasy at its core. So it's very enjoyable. I don't think anybody really needs me to tell them what The Hobbit is about, and I just really enjoyed it. Now, I do still have a little bit of a cough and a tickle in my throat from being sick, so now that I have talked for like an hour after filming my favorites video, I still have two very big books left to talk about, and I don't know if I have enough breath left to do it with, but I'm gonna give it a shot. So, I'm not gonna take these down just because they're massive and I don't wanna hold both of them, but I finished both Rhythm of War and Wind and Truth in the month of December. So, upon my reread, I gave Rhythm of War 4.25 stars, which is down from the 5 stars that I gave it on my first read, but I think that some of the pacing issues became a lot more apparent on the reread, and I still really enjoyed the book. I don't really have a problem with the storylines. Like, I really love Adolin's storyline in particular. Shallan's isn't my favorite, but I think that knowing where it's going, I can appreciate it a little bit more. I still really like Kaladin's storyline. I know that there's some complaints about that being too repetitive, but I didn't really struggle with that. And then I loved Navani's storyline just like I did the first time. And then the storyline where you're in the other location with like Yasna and Dalinar is a little bit weaker in my opinion. Like, there are certain parts of that storyline that are really strong, especially the parts that have to do with Taravangian, but I think that I maybe was able to be a little bit more muted in my review this time around, whereas maybe I had a lot more momentum the first time around because I had just read the first 3 books for the first time, and then I was ready to read Rhythm of War. And don't get me wrong, I still really enjoyed it. It's just not the 5-star for me that it was in 2020. And then I gave Wind and Truth 4 stars, and there honestly is a ton to say about Wind and Truth that I'm not really going to go into because this is not like a spoiler review or anything of Wind and Truth. But it's a little bit unfortunate, but I genuinely feel like Wind and Truth is a weaker book, and I still really enjoyed the experience reading it. I think that Wind and Truth is better paced probably than Oathbringer or Rhythm of War. Like the structure that Sanderson chose and the time frame, they both really worked for me. I thought that that allowed him to pace it out really well. I think that the beginning of the book was the weakest part and has also been the weakest beginning in the series so far, unfortunately. And I did like a lot of the emotional journeys that the characters went on throughout, but I didn't love the ending because of some of the implications for wider Cosmere things. I felt like we lost an intimacy to the ending, and the conflict is like a very high level thing that it was weaker for me because of that. So I don't know, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, but I don't think that right now is the time for me to talk about it because I physically can't continue to speak for too long or else I will start coughing. But I would be interested in the comments to hear some of your Wind and Truth thoughts if you would like to share them. If you do post spoilers, just kind of give other people in the comments a warning, please, by like spacing downwards or something like that, because the last thing I want to do is spoil it for people who haven't read it yet and are still excited about it. But it was slightly disappointing for me because of where it means we're going. So I'm gonna reassess on Sanderson. I'm probably going to try Mistborn Era 2 one more time and then see how I feel. And I might just not read any Sanderson for a while. I still probably won't because this was a pretty heavy year for me reading him in terms of like the Stormlight books are all really big, so reading 5 of those in a year, it's a big portion of reading, especially since I was also reading Malazan at the same time. But yeah, I guess that's kind of a mixed mood feeling to end on, but those were the 2 big boys that I read in December, or like I read most of Rhythm of War in November. I just finished it in December, and Wind and Truth was my most anticipated release of the year. So I'm really happy to have it under my belt regardless, and I'm happy to have read the Stormlight Archive to this point, and I was still like really invested in the characters. I still had that emotional investment, so I was definitely attached to where they were going and I enjoyed some of their journeys. But yeah, that is it for my December wrap up. So thank you so much for watching. Please do like this video if you liked it, and let me know down in the comments if you have any thoughts about what I said. And as always, you can subscribe if you would like to see more content from me. I'll have my socials linked in the description if you're interested in any of that stuff, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!